Michael Afton is single-handedly the dumbest member of the Afton family. 1 year ago, I made a video going over Michael's apparent lack of intelligence. This coincidentally is also the video that started my descent into madness. However, there's one thing that repeatedly came up over that video's lifespan.
Michael was restrained to the chair.
Tied to the chair.
Michael
Michael was strapped to a chair, which quite frankly is not true. For some reason, Michael being instantly tied down upon entering the room is a common headcanon. But why? I get that this moment makes no sense, but this doesn't make much sense either. While it's true Ballora was wheeled in or at least fastened down during her visit to the scooper, Michael is not shown or even implied to have gotten the same treatment. Let me refresh the memory of everybody watching. Michael crawls into the scooping room and is face to face with Ennard, and after being yapped at for what feels like 10 years, he just eats the scooper and calls it a day. Never, ever is there any sound of restraints, clicking, any conveyor belt noises, or anything. In fact, there's no way Ennard could have restrained Michael or fastened him down because Baby literally says,
Ballora is behind you. She is afraid of the scooping room. She will not follow you.
And since Ennard already exists and Baby's shell was fucking hollow, or at least mostly hollow, more on that later, every animatronic is already conjoined, which means that if Ballora won't enter, none of them will because they're all the same character now. There is nothing to even imply Michael was restrained to anything during this moment. He just didn't move. A lot of you guys also pointed out that on night 4, Baby literally gives an entire speech about the scooper, so Michael should be aware of what the scooper does, which makes him even dumber for not standing literally anywhere else but in front of the big f***ing spoon. Another response I got is that Ennard is somehow holding Michael down with wires, and that just isn't true. Going off the very blueprint seen in the game, we know that Michael is here, and based off the yap session we get right before we get scooped, we know that Ennard is on the far side of the room, on the other side of the glass. Looking around reveals that there are no wires present, so the only way for Ennard to make it to Michael is for him to somehow stretch all the way around the scooping room, and we just pray to Scott Cawthon that there's some sort of off-screen entrance that leads from back there to directly behind Michael. Or we assume that on the small portion of his body that we can't see, he's stretching his wires upwards and through an off-screen vent that's restricting us. This is just pure headcanon, and in fact, we can shoot down all of that by just taking a simple glance at Ennard. Ennard isn't that big, genuinely, and he's no different here than he is in the scooping room. If you look at Ennard, you'll notice that his feet don't even have much wiring around them, let alone the lower parts of his legs. What wires do remain have been chopped and cut down in preparation for their new onesie. How do I know this, you may ask? Because have you ever looked at a Funtime blueprint? This is some of the most bulky and complicated pasta I have ever seen. Circus Baby alone is f***ing enormous and definitely wouldn't fit inside Michael, let alone 3 other giant animatronics, hence why they needed to cut themselves down. Stretching from one end of the scooping room to the other in their current state is not feasible, especially doing it in a way where we don't even see it. Using this small sliver of Ennard's obscured body with no deformation makes it really hard to believe. What wires do remain are either tightly knit for structural purposes, like maintaining Ennard's shape and forming legs to stand on, or they're either too short to go anywhere, like we see here and here. Doing some sort of crazy off-screen stretch is a blob level feat, and I know somebody out there is typing away preparing to say Ennard could probably control wires not connected to him, which is false. Not only would that make the fake ending incredibly hilarious if Ennard could do this trick and just didn't, but there is nothing, in the games at least, that points to an animatronic having the ability to control and move around pieces of themselves that have been disconnected. The only examples I could find were Nightmare Chica with her cupcake and Nightmare Freddy with the freckles. Regardless of if you believe Didophobia or think FNAF 4 was just a nightmare, I don't care. The point is that it's not real, and since they're not real, we can't compare them to a real animatronic. Foxy from UCN is another character shown disassembling himself, but again, UCN does not take place in reality, so we can't treat it like it does. Glamrock Freddy is also a weird one since he can survive as just a head, and the prototype Freddy seems to be quite fine without his cranium, but other than that, I have no other examples. examples. Ennard designed themselves to fit nice and snug inside their new fleshy pajamas. It's just a shame that they forgot corpses rot. I don't know what kind of mass psychosis washed over this fanbase, but there is nothing that supports wire theory or chair theory other than Michael's lack of dodging. Even the way the scene starts doesn't make sense. The last time Michael was grabbed or hindered by an animatronic was at the end of night 3 when he's grabbed and jump scared by Funtime Foxy and wakes up in a spring-lock suit. If Michael truly did somehow get attacked or restrained here and there wasn't a jump scare or any sort of indicator to tell he was attacked, then that is a massive inconsistency. Finally, some people also said Michael just gave up since the situation is hopeless and he was probably just depressed. I can't really comment on this because there's not really much to go on. For the majority of the game, Michael doesn't speak, and while yes, the fake ending of Sister Location is not canon, I do think that it's quite telling that Michael doesn't give up even though he'd still be depressed. So I really don't think him being blackpilled is the reason he did this. I mean, he deadass hears Ennard using the voice of his dead sister and just goes home, turns on the TV, eats his popcorn, and chills out like nothing happened. Granted, he doesn't run here either, but I chalk that up to him just being an idiot once more. Him being depressed is never mentioned, implied, shown, hinted at, or anything, and is thus pure headcanon, so I can't really say I think it's correct. TLDR, Michael is a moron, he wasn't tied up, he wasn't restrained. I don't know where the idea of him being restrained came from, but that is simply false. Subscribe, follow, join, get out of my sight. Special thanks to our beautiful channel members, Arcade77, Bam, Ubercharge, and Apelix. Thank you all for being amazing.